So let's start building our app. And because I've already created some sample data in the database, I'm going to go ahead and pull that through. So I'm going to go to this column right here. This should be the one. And then add a query, and the backend query gonna be the restaurant, because you want to display all the restaurants and you have the ability to click on a restaurant and get taken to that specific restaurant page. So I'm going to click confirm here. Yes, that's what I want. And then I'm going to go ahead and get the restaurant's name. So that's confirmed. And maybe here I can just add like the user address, right? So here should be the authenticated user address. Good. So here we need to display the distance in kilometers, right? So from the current user to the restaurant, or from the restaurant to the current user, and then the distance in minutes. But how do we achieve that? Because we don't actually have like a native way to implement this. And sometimes as we're building our application, we'll often find the need for specialized functionalities, right? That actually go beyond of what FlutterFlow is offering. It can be a unique widget or user interface that is actually not found in the widgets library. Or it can be an integration of a specific package. So that's where we're going to be using custom codes. And if you come right here in the navigation, you actually do have three types of custom codes. So you have the custom functions, and these functions usually expect an input, right? So you might give it some data, let it process it, and then it gives you back an output. We do have custom widgets, which are like the UI elements that are found here. So if there's a widget that you want to implement, but you cannot find it here, you can then go ahead and create it by yourself, and then you can reference it in the application. Then we do have custom actions. So if there are some actions that you want to perform, but FlutterFlow doesn't offer it, then you can create it here. And we're going to go ahead and see how custom functions work, custom actions, and maybe we'll see how custom widgets work. And here we want to implement the distance in kilometers. So my user already has an address. So this is the user right here. So my user actually already has a location right here. And this location is coming in form of coordinates. And that's the only type that we have in FlutterFlow. And then the restaurants also have some location that's coming in the form of coordinates. So we're going to go ahead and calculate the distance between the restaurant and the user. And in this case, we're going to need to use a custom function. There are actually two ways in which you can create these custom functions. So the first one is using the Copilot right here, where you can type some instruction and then it's going to give you clean code that you can use. So this language is actually called Dart. And the second way is to learn how to code, but you actually don't have the time to learn how to code. But you might be surprised how much you can learn in just a few hours a day. So if you go to the Dart website and you go over here to overview, you can read a little bit about this language. And if you scroll down, you actually do have some learning materials, right? But this is a low-code course. So we're going to go ahead and use the Copilot. And when you're creating a function, there are 4 steps that you need to follow. Naming the function, defining the arguments, setting a return type, and finally coding it. So let's name our function, and I'm going to call this calculate distance. And when you are naming your function, you want to be descriptive and clear. So don't use abbreviations or maybe call it distance instead. You want to be clear, because when the Copilot is running, it's actually going to check the function name, your argument. So I'm going to name it calculate distance, and then I'm going to go ahead and define arguments. So I'm going to have an origin. So this can be the restaurant or the user, and the type gonna be coordinates. Good. Then I'm going to define the second argument. So this I'm going to call destination, and this is also going to be coordinates. And if you check is list, it means you're going to be passing in a list of coordinates, but we're only passing in one because we want to calculate the distance between this and this. And when checking null, it means it can have a null value and it won't crash your app. Second, the return gonna be a string. That's fine because it's gonna be coming in kilometer, and this cannot be null. So I'm gonna go to the Copilot and then type in my instruction. So it's distance between two locations, origin and destination, and then click this arrow here and wait for the AI to do its magic. Okay, good. Now let's copy this function inside our custom function and run some tests. So I already have the origin pasted in and destination that are copied from my database, and then click run. Good. So you can see that there's 3.31 kilometers between me currently, the user, and the restaurant. So I'm going to go ahead and save this function and just compile it so that this error here can be resolved. And good. Now, how do we use this function inside our application? So I'm going to go back, and where it says distance in kilometer, I'm going to go ahead and text, and should have the ability to insert custom functions. So right now I have one, which is the calculate distance. So I'm going to click on that. And then obviously I need to pass in the origin and the destination. So this is going to be the authenticated user address. So location address, and then the destination going to be the restaurant address. Good. Confirm. Now that we have the distance, we have the name, we're going to go and change the image as well and use the restaurant image URL and then test this. So instant reload. Great. So you can see that we have the distance in kilometers and the restaurant images. Alright, so in the next lesson, we're going to be learning about how to calculate the minutes. And this is going to be a little bit different because you're going to use an application programming interface or an API. And the one we're going to be using is the Google Metrics API. So this is the one we're going to be using to actually calculate the distance in minutes. So for that and more, I'll catch you in the next one.